Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Live at 5. I am your curator, Kevin Adkisson, with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. And we are here down at the Cranbrook Kingswood Middle School for Girls. It is election day, and so I thought that I would take our minds off of national politics to come and look at something beautiful down in the valley. So those of you who have been around Cranbrook for a long time, or if you came to Kingswood as a young lady, or if you sent your students here as or if you sent your children here as students, you know that the Middle School for Girls has not been around for that long in this building. It used to be located in the lower level of Kingswood School, the garden level, also known as the basement, that would very often flood. And in 2011, it moved down here to what had been the Kingswood tennis courts. Now, this building I did a tour of on Facebook Live a few months ago, and so if you want to learn more about the architecture of the building or see the inside of the Middle School for Girls, be sure to go check that out on the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research Facebook page. It was designed by Lake Flato Architects, who are San Antonio-based architects who do a lot of regional buildings in the American South and American Southeast. They're known for their architecture on this sort of Texas plains. This was their first building outside of Texas, or outside of the South. And they were chosen as the architects by Arliss Siebert, former head of schools, who fell in love with one of their prep school buildings while she was on a private school association tour or retreat. And the architects really used materials that complemented Eliel Saarinen's architecture, so the same glazed brick and copper cladding, as well as custom concrete blocks. And it looks out over the athletic fields, and I'm not sure, maybe one of you in the comments can tell me if this field was here before the middle school or if it was just grass. It's hard to tell from aerial photographs. So there were tennis courts where the school building actually is. And then there are faculty apartments down here, the Tamarack Apartments from the mid-1970s. And Kingswood is just through that glade of trees. But I did not want to talk about just the school building today on the tour, which really, probably 5 a.m, I would have had better sunlight. It has been a beautiful day here in Michigan. Instead, what I want to discuss is one of the sculptures that is here in the Middle School for Girls courtyard. Now, these courtyards were initially conceived by Peter Osler, who was the landscape architect of the Institute of Science Herb Family Garden. He was also the landscape architect of the natatorium. In the end, it was realized by the architects themselves, but Peter Osler's idea, which sort of survived and changed with the project, was to develop rain gardens that would help with the runoff from the building's roof and stop the runoff from just going straight into the fields and into the River Rouge system. And so these plants are all Michigan native plants designed to be drought resistant in the summer and then to sort of flourish with the rain runoff and come back every year. And at the center here of the Fischer Cummings Courtyard, we have the Lady of the Hour. And so we're here with Carl Millis's Ice Dancer. And this was placed here in the courtyard in 2013. It's a 2012 cast of a 1948-1949 sculpture. And before we take a close look at the Ice Dancer, a little bit about why this is here. My Cranbrook groupies on the line, and all of you who know campus well know that Carl Millis was the sculptor in residence for Cranbrook Academy of Art from 1931 to 51. And he also was Sweden's greatest sculptor. And so he got famous after studying with Rodin in Paris and then setting up his own shop outside of Stockholm. And he came to Cranbrook as really sort of considered to be the great sort of successor of Western sculpture in the mode of Rodin. And while here, he only did one piece on commission for Cranbrook, and that was the Jonah Fountain we looked at a couple of weeks ago. But George Booth and the Cranbrook Foundation, they bought a lot of Carl Milles. So even though he wasn't sculpting things for Cranbrook, as he was sculpting things for other clients, Cranbrook Foundation was buying those new pieces, like the Orpheus Fountain. They were buying older pieces. And so in the end, every Cranbrook building ended up with a Carl Milles sculpture. So over even at the Middle School for Boys, there's Beethoven. At Brookside, there's the wonderful Moose. And so it was thought after the school opened in 2011, we need to add a Carl Milles. And so the Milles Garden in Stockholm still allows casts to be made. It's part of the way that Olga and Carl Milles envisioned their legacy would be preserved, was by the Milles Garden being able to cast and sell bronzes. And so this is a piece that was sculpted in 1948 to 1949, cast in 2012. The same company that cast all of Cranbrook's Milles bronzes cast this one, though in a different location. They moved from sort of center Stockholm to the suburbs in the mid-20th century. So it's the same exact lost wax casting technique to be able to create this hollow bronze ice dancer. And she is sort of stuck here mid-pirouette. And so she is just landing from her graceful move. And you might look at the ice dancer and think, okay, well, he's from Sweden. Swedish people must love ice skating. I have no idea if they do, but it's a cold country. And so he's just sculpting another thing from his own life. In actuality, the ice dancer is really one of the very few pieces of Carl Milles' work that is not religious, not from ancient or modern myths, or isn't sort of part of illustrating a grand sort of epic. And in fact, it was inspired by something much more, I think, sort of visceral and pedestrian, and that was the ice skaters at Rockefeller Center. And so he visited Rockefeller Center in 1948, and he saw all of the beautiful ice skaters down at the end of the pedestrian mall in front of 30 Rock. And he was just mesmerized by the beauty and grace of the ice dancer swirling around in the middle of New York City. And so this is a piece based off of that evening in winter at Rockefeller Center. And so it makes this sculpture, particularly among those on display at Cranbrook, probably the most American of topics. If you think of the Bull and Europa or Engelbrecht or Jonah and the Whale, they're always sort of either religious or sort of traditional myths, Greek and Roman myths. And yet here we have this very late sculpture. So Milles died in 1955. This is sculpted in 48 to 49. So he's a much older artist at the end of his career, and he's sculpting a very much an American scene. Now, of course, there are other American Milles sculptures, like the American Indian that he sculpted in Minneapolis, or the Meeting of the Waters, which is representing the confluence of the Missouri and Mississippi River in St. Louis. But those, again, are more representative of ideas of American nationhood and less sort of literal than the ice dancer here. Now, every year she gets treated with all of the outdoor sculptures. And so she was sort of black when she was put in place here, but she has developed in just 8 years a really beautiful patina, this green color. And so every year Giorgio and his team from Venus Bronze Works in Detroit come out and do either a hot wax, a cold wax, or just a non-abrasive cleaning treatment to keep her looking resplendent. And the whole courtyard, as well as the addition of the ice dancer, were made possible by a great family supporting Cranbrook, the Fischer Cummings family. And so Peter Cummings and his wife Julie and Julie's sister Marjorie Fischer, Dr. Marjorie Fischer, helped to make this possible. And the Fischer sisters are alumna of Kingswood, and Peter and Julie are parents of a Cranbrook graduate. So we're grateful to their support of the girls' middle school and this courtyard, as well as the addition of the ice dancer. And there we see Carl Millis's signature. So it is cool. We have photographs of this piece being cast in color because it is, unlike the other bronzes where perhaps there was less interest in documenting the actual technical process of making it. With Cranbrook acquiring a brand new Carl Millis in the 21st century, we documented her sort of production and then placement here. And the question about the planter, it really, personally, in my opinion, shouldn't be there. Have I been known to move it from here? Yes. Does it keep returning here? Yes. So someone wants it there. She is resting on a Mankato Kasota base, which is the same limestone that was used by Eliel Saarinen at the Art Museum and the Institute of Science. And Kingswood. And so you have this sort of materiality of the Kingswood Kasota stone with the bronze and then the Kingswood colored brick. And if you notice, the front door of the school is on that side. And so you actually come into this sort of trapezoidal shaped lobby going past the light fixture sculpture by Cranbrook School's alum David Nosenchuk. And then your eye is sort of led out towards the ice dancer who is framed along the entrance. So I thought long and hard. I tried to find a topic for today's Live at 5 that would be topical for Election Day, but we only really have one piece of election political art on campus. Over at Christ Church Cranbrook, there are the donkey and elephant misericords underneath the choir stall. But I thought the church probably wouldn't want me to come over on Election Day and talk. And then when I was at my polling place, Birmingham Congregational Church, the church organist was behind me at the poll, and he said, of course you should come over and do it. So we'll be back one day to go and look at Christ Church Cranbrook now that it has reopened somewhat from COVID. Instead of finding that explicitly political, though, I thought that we would come and celebrate the ice dancer as Carl Millis's most American of sculptures. So I hope that you've voted. No polls are closed, so if you haven't voted, get in your car, go out and do your civic duty. And it's gorgeous weather, so if you're in this part of the country, go out and take a walk. And I'll be back tomorrow for Live at 5 from Cranbrook House from the Oak Room on Facebook. And then I'll be back next Tuesday for another Live at 5 here on Instagram. And on November 15th, I think if that's a Sunday, we will be having a in-depth behind-the-scene tour of the Mary Chase Perry's Stratton House, designed by Mary and her husband, architect Buck Stratton. Mary is most famous for being the founder of the great feminist ceramicist that you will consider heading over to center.cranbrook.edu and buying a ticket to join that virtual house tour. It's now the home of two important collectors and Cranbrook supporters who are generously allowing me to come over and film a live tour through their home. And so I think it's going to be fun to see not only the Pewabic pottery and the design of the Strattons, but also to see the living collection of a lot of really great Cranbrook Academy of art on display in the house. It's my third favorite house in Michigan after Saarinen. It's my third favorite house in Michigan after Saarinen House and the Alden B. Dow House. So really, you do want to come along on this tour. It is $35, but your ticket does support the center and all of the work that we do. So we do offer these Live at 5 tours for free, and I hope that you have been enjoying these really becoming more and more in the weeds, in-depth looks at Cranbrook. But in order to keep my job and in order to keep the center in operation, we do have to have these paid tours and paid events to make up for all of the lost income of having actual physical tours here on campus. We are offering 6-person physical in-person tours of Sarnan House and Smith House, and there are new times for Smith House, Saturday at 11 a.m. So if you looked earlier in the season and it was sold out, go back to center.cranbrook.edu, and there should be even more openings for Sarnan House and Smith House tours, the Frank Lloyd Wright Smith House, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 3:30 p.m. So that's all my plug. Let's see. If you're in Indiana, you have like an hour and a half to go vote. If you're in Michigan, you have till 8. If you're in Alaska, you have until 2 a.m. Eastern. So make sure you get out to the poll and do your civic duty. I'm Kevin Adkisson, curator with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research, and I am a voter. I'm also an alumni of the University of Delaware. Who knew? So I'll see you all later. I hope you enjoyed this look at Carl Millis's The Ice Dancer. Until next time, until next Tuesday, be safe, wear your mask, stay home, unless you're coming out to look at the beauty of nature. Goodbye, everyone. If someone lost your water bottle, I found it. And if someone lost a face mask in the woods, pick up your face mask. Walking down here, dozens of face masks in the middle of the woods. On that note, goodbye.